Hey, what's up, everybody? It's finally returned. We are back with album reviews since 2015's here, and I just listened to my first album of the new year that has come out or is set to come out, but it was put out on YouTube already, and I gave it a listen. Today, we're going to be reviewing the new album from Napalm Death, Apex Predator Easy Meat. This is the album review for it, and I'm going to go real quickly and say that for those who don't know who Napalm Death is a grindcore or extreme metal band that started in the early 1980s. They started as more of a anarcho crust punk band that had quickly evolved into a much more of a heavy metal style of a band, thanks to bands like Slayer and Venom and Metallica and Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden. They took some of those influences, mixed it in with some of the hardcore lyrical content from punk bands. They mixed that with the musicality of a metal band and pioneered a style of extreme metal that is prevalent today, grindcore, and to a certain extent even some death metal. When they put out their first album, Scum, it was just heavy, brutal songs with really punk-style lyrics, and it just made for an intense early first two albums. Scum and From Enslavement to Obliteration are two chaotic grindcore albums. Then they would sort of evolve into almost more of a death metal band, beginning with Harmony Corruption in 1990 due to the input of new vocalist Mark Greenway, nicknamed Barney, with his deep, low, growling, roaring vocals. And they would pretty much do the death metal style throughout the 90s, and then in the 2000s, that's when they started to mix the death metal and the grindcore to help invent the death grind fusion genre for extreme music. And pretty much ever since the dawn of the 2000s, Napalm Death has been on a roll, putting out solid albums, like their album in 2012, Utilitarian, and now we continue on with this album, Apex Predator Easy Meat, and this is their 15th album. That's a lot of fucking albums, and Napalm Death showing no signs of slowing down, even though most of the guys are in their mid-40s. They're showing that, hey, sometimes if you're older, you can play faster and better, depending on the style of music you're trying to aim for. And what Napalm Death's been doing for a long time is doing some of the fastest, heaviest music that has ever been created in the history of metal music. But with this album, you pretty much get what you would expect from a Napalm Death album, with the heavy blast beats, some really crazy riffs, brutal sound quality where it's so raw and heavy, and just the sound of it's just so chaotic, and also like the lyrics are political as you can get, with like stuff about what's wrong with the world, and like stuff about like gun rights and about destruction of animals and stuff like that. And the album cover really portrays that with the package of like dead meat, which looks like it has like brains and guts in it. It's one of the most gory album covers I've ever seen, and this is for a grindcore, death metal band. This is one of the most gory looking album covers and one of the most brutal looking covers I've ever seen from metal, and it's because you wouldn't expect anything like this from like a grind band, depending on the style of grind you're going for. Like, if it were like early Carcass, it's understandable, but this is Napalm Death. They don't really rely on horror and gore or anything like that. They rely on political gore, on political brutality, and their album cover was more of like a horror kind of idea, same with a little bit of a political brutality behind it. But aside from that, songs on this album that really stuck out in my head, the introduction, the title track, Apex Predator Easy Me, which was just like a near 4-minute introduction song, and it was creepy with these speeches. It was just like one of the most coolest ways to kick off such a brutal album with something like that. And then it goes right into Smash a Single Digit, and boom, we get the Napalm Death that we all know and love, and that's the very grinding, fast, brutal types of tracks. But yeah, with that song. And those first two tracks really set the pace for what this album was gonna be. Later on, songs like Cesspits, which was the first track they released off of this album back about a month or two ago, and it got me immediately excited because that was probably, in my opinion, the best track of this album was Cesspits, because it was one of the longer songs too, at about 3.5 minutes. Pretty much on average, the songs averaged about nearly 3 minutes. You had a few tracks that would be a little over 3 minutes, and those were very extensive tracks that just had so much brutal riffs and just inventiveness behind what they were trying to go for. But then the closing track, I'm probably going to destroy this, but adversarial copulating snakes. Yeah, I know I destroyed that. Someone's probably going to be like, you're a fucking asshole, and that's okay. But that last track, it was a little over 5 minutes, and you don't ever really see Napalm Death going for songs more than 4 minutes in length. Although on Harmony Corruption, that's when they started kind of doing that a little bit more, because the first two albums had 30 tracks apiece, pretty roughly, and the album was pretty much a half hour long. But with Harmony Corruption, it was only 11 tracks in 40 minutes, and that's because they did longer tracks, up to about 5.5 minutes, and this song kind of brings you back a little bit to those albums like Harmony Corruption, and even Fear, Emptiness, Despair, and Diatribes, and pretty much any of the albums from the 90s that had those long, expansive tracks. This track definitely has a lot of that going for it. But overall with this album, it's a 14-track affair at about 40 minutes, and most of the songs are about 2 to 3 minutes long. The shortest song on the album was about 1.5 minutes, which was Smash a Single Digit. And then the final track, Adversarial Collaping Snakes, being at a little over 5 minutes. It just shows to you how diverse Napalm Death can be within just going out there and just playing as fast as they could. They can show they can play by doing different length tracks. I mean, with other great tracks I can pinpoint, like Bloodless Coup, Beyond the Pale, Hierarchy, Stunt Your Growth, Timeless Flogging, Stubborn Stains, Metaphorically Screw You. Pretty much every track on this album kicked so much ass, and if you don't get hurt from thrashing your neck off to some of the riffs and the blast beats on this album, I don't know if you're human. But I want your neck, because sometimes my neck hurts because I headbang a lot, depending on my mood. So, yeah. But overall, this is a great album. Already, the first album of the year that I'm reviewing, it's already a really solid release. 9 out of 10. Or actually, no, we're going with, I'm going with a new scoring system this year with 1 to 100. This is a 90 out of 100. Or actually, no. Gosh, I'm messing up today. I'm actually going to be fair. I'm going to give this an 85 out of 100. This is a very solid release, showing you that Napalm Death can still put out quality albums. With they're in the middle of their third decade or so, maybe fourth. It depends on how you look at it. I think it's their third. Yeah, their third decade going. I mean, well, technically 34 years going, and they're still going strong, still putting out crazy albums, and just albums that just get you thinking lyrically and just make you want to go in the mosh pits and just beat the shit out of people by how brutal some of these tracks are with the blast beats and the riffs, bass lines, and the vocals. Like, the vocals from Barney are still great, and Mitch Harris doing the high black metal-esque type of vocals in the background. Together, you mix the low roar of Barney Greenway with the high-pitched black metal scream of Mitch Harris. You combine that together, you get Napalm Death, pretty much. So anyways, that does it for this review. Once again, 85 out of 100. Solid album. We may see this album be on the top album of the year list. But anyways, rock on!